Governor Josh Shapiro met with Republican leaders in the legislature just a day after his budget address, and afterwards he sat down with Fox 43 News to talk about his proposal. Fox 43's James Corrigan spoke one-on-one with the governor. He's here now with details of that conversation.
Well, Evan, the governor's fourth budget comes just after he only signed his third budget back in November. It was one both sides lauded for making investments in education and tax relief while not taking from the rainy day fund. It also came 135 days late. And Governor Shapiro, in his budget address on Tuesday, extended an invitation to leaders from the House and Senate to meet him the very next day. Shortly after that meeting, he spoke with me.
How was the meeting with the other leaders, and do you feel that any progress was made?
Yeah, we had a really constructive meeting. Everybody came, which was terrific. We talked about, some areas of agreement. We talked about some areas where we got some work to do, and we set a really aggressive schedule to keep meeting, and I think that's important.
That schedule will come as a relief to those with last year's 135-day budget deadlock still in mind. This year's negotiations will center around the proposal's $53.3 billion price tag, which would take more than $4.5 billion from the rainy day fund. Governor Shapiro told me that his plan plays the long game in growing the economy and replenishing the reserves over time.
During my 5-year budget, there is no broad-based tax increase that is required, and it still maintains a healthy surplus each year so that if we have an emergency, we're able to deal with it.
Republican leaders pushed back in their response to the governor's budget address Tuesday, raising concerns over the Commonwealth's economic outlook if reserves are drained and tax increases are necessary.
The moment we start draining that fund completely is the moment we're going to get bond downgrades, we're going to get a negative outlook, we're paying more for our debt, and all of a sudden we have nothing.
I understand posturing, they're going to do some posturing, but at the end of the day, the people of Pennsylvania need to know this is a balanced budget that cuts taxes, doesn't raise them, and still maintains a healthy surplus.
Among the hottest topics locally has been data centers, which have brought billions in investment to the Commonwealth, but have also brought concerns to local communities over excess electricity usage driving up prices. Shapiro unveiled his proposed regulations in his budget address, saying developers would need to provide their own generation and community benefits in order to obtain key permits and tax incentives.
I'd be skeptical of these developers if I was the community. I'm skeptical of many of them. That's why we want to be clear. These are the steps you've got to take if you're going to be building here in our Commonwealth.
The budget negotiations have now begun, with the two sides set to fight it out over spending priorities and the governor's other proposals. Republican leaders say they will push for fiscal responsibility in the final project, while Shapiro says he will make sure the final budget leaves no one behind.
We're going to stand for the same things we've been fighting for along the way and try to deliver a budget that's fiscally responsible and keep this Commonwealth on a path to growth.
It shows that we believe every child of God deserves a firm foundation through a quality education, and that children deserve to grow up in a community where they're safe and in a community where they'll be able to get a job when they graduate, that they can pursue their passion.
Now, some of the other proposals in the governor's address included longer-standing issues like taxing skill games, legalizing recreational marijuana, and providing long-term funding for mass transit. I also spoke with him about the proposed $100 million federal response fund he proposed in the case of federal cuts and funding freezes. You can see more on that issue and more on the interview itself on fox43.com. Evan?
And of course, it's due on July 1st. We'll see how the negotiations play out. Fox 43's James Corrigan. James, thank you.